At this time, we'd like to invite Dr. Sonia Doi to the stage. Dr. Sonia Doi has been a member of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Maryland since 1990 and currently is the doctrinal director of this organization. She is also one of the founders and the president of the U.S. Spiritist Medical Association. She is an MD, a PhD, an associate professor of medicine at the Uniformed Services University, Bethesda, Maryland. Dr. Doi's topic today is Jesus and physical healing.
Hello again. Oh, it seems like I came out of the cave and there's so much light that blinds me I can't see you. But in fact, we are involved in so much light, divine light in this meeting, and I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to talk about Jesus and spiritual healing. So I thank the organizing committee for that. Well, Jesus went through Galilee, teaching in the synagogues, preaching, and healing people. And the news of him went around very fast, even without the internet. And people were coming from all the neighboring cities with all sorts of diseases and torments, looking for him. And he did so much in such a short period of time. But John, in his gospel, says that not all of the wonderful deeds that Jesus did were recorded. And he actually says that if every one of these fantastic miracles that Jesus did were recorded, were written, the whole world would not have room for all the books that would be written. And of all these prodigious deeds, most of them were cures, and they were recorded in the New Testament. One of these very well-known, most famous deeds was the resurrection of Lazarus. And Lazarus, according to his sister, according to the records, had been dead for 4 days. And Jesus came and said and called, "Lazarus, come out." And he did walk out of the grave. On another occasion, Jesus was entering Nain, the city of Nain, and a funeral procession was coming out. It was the only son of a widow. And Jesus had pity on the matter. He touched the coffin and said, "Young man, get out, come up." And the young man sat up and started to talk. And again, another case, when Jairus was talking to Jesus and begging Jesus, "Please come and heal my daughter who is dying." And at that time, people came and to say, "Jairus, your daughter has already died." Jesus said, "Jairus, believe." And they went to Jairus' home to find people in commotion, crying. And Jesus looked at them and said, "Why are you weeping? The girl is only asleep." And indeed he called, "Little girl, get up." And she immediately stood up. So were these cases of resurrection? Because restoring corporeal life to a dead person is contrary to the natural laws. And we know that Jesus would not break any laws. But then Kardec explains, more likely in all these cases, people were not really dead. they were in a state of syncope or lethargy. And Kardec, in his book Genesis, explained Jesus with this fluidic power. And this strong will was able to reanimate the dormant senses in these people. He was able to recall the spirit to the body. Why? Because the links of the perispiritual links were not broken yet. So another impressive case was this woman, a bleeding woman, who had been bleeding for 12 years. And she truly believed that by just touching Jesus' clothes, she would be healed. So she goes in the middle of the crowd, and behind Jesus, she reaches for his cloak. And immediately she feels that the bleeding stopped. And at the same time, Jesus immediately felt like this fluidic power went out of him. And he turned and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" And the disciples, the crowd around him said, "Master, only anyone could have touched you. So many people." He repeated again, "Who touched my clothes?" And this woman fell at his feet, and she told him the truth. And Jesus said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. You are free from suffering." You are free from suffering. Your faith has healed. He said again when Bartimaeus, this blind man who was begging at the roadside, Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, and this blind man calls, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And the crowd around tried to quiet him, to shush him. And he said even louder, "Jesus, have mercy on me." So Jesus turned, called him, and said, "Son, what do you want me to do to you?" And the blind man said, "Rabbi, I want to see." Jesus touched his eyes and said, "Your faith has healed you." So this was a very strong faith. And Kardec says the faith expressed here was a true attractive force. Those who do not have faith, they can either neutralize or block an action, a healing action. And this explains how two people with the same sickness, with the same illness, in the presence of the same medium, can have different results. One can be cured, the other may not. So this is one of the most important principles of healing mediumship. There's so much to learn from this. And then when Jesus was stepping out of a boat in his own town, a few men brought him a paralytic. And Jesus looked and saw that they came with so much faith. So Jesus looked at the paralytic and said, "Take heart, son. Your sins are forgiven." So people looked around and said, he didn't say, "Your faith has healed you." He said, "Your sins are forgiven." Why is that? And what does this have to do with cure? So we learned again from Kardec, and most of this is in the book Genesis. Jesus was teaching. He was teaching about the plurality of existence, of the multiple lives, And he was also teaching the law of cause and effect. He was teaching that most of the afflictions in life are expiations of past errors. He was teaching that once we pay off our debts, we may be free from that suffering. So that's why he says, your sins are forgiven. You have paid your debt. You are free from this suffering. You are free from the cause of this illness. And then when Jesus healed this man who was blind from birth, then the disciples asked, Master, who sinned in this case? Was the man or was his parents? He was born blind. So Jesus replied, neither this man nor his parents sinned. But this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. So Jesus very humbly is saying the merit in these cures is not mine. The merit is God. So Jesus, by alleviating suffering, touched hearts of so many people. And he made so many more followers than if he would by just doing miracles without healing. When Jesus did all this so-called supernatural or miracles or cures, was Jesus acting as a medium? This is a question that again is in Genesis, and Kardec explains. As we all know, Jesus was the most elevated spirit, the purest spirit that ever incarnated on earth. He, as a pure spirit, had the minimum links to the corporeal body. He was living more in the spiritual realm than in the material life. And he didn't need any assistance, as we mediums on earth need. So, no, he was not acting as a medium. He was acting on his own power. Then the disciples, when Jesus could cast out the demon out of that little boy in that passage, the disciples asked, Master, why we could not do it? And Jesus replied, because of your little faith. If you have faith as a mustard seed, you would say to the mountain, go from here to there, and the mountain would move, and nothing would be impossible to you. So he left us a teaching. With all this, every one of these episodes of cure, he left some teaching. Unfortunately, we could not cover all that is recorded in the gospel. But he told us that we can also do it. And as Spiritists, we know that there's so much we can do. Promoting faith, true faith. But Jesus left another message. He said, give freely what you freely receive. So it is, as we all know, Jesus never charged, never got anything for all the benefits, for all the wonderful, not only physical cures, but when he was healing the souls, And that is one of the most important teachings that he left to us. So let's be inspired by all the works of Jesus, and we'll try to do our best in bringing more comfort in healing souls, being physically or morally. Thank you.